They all go to the hospital. Dean Sandow is like, "You're right. I should have listened. Because of me, Lethe forgot its sacred honor of looking into these things and taking them seriously. Look what Tara was doing. Look at what the houses were doing. All this bad stuff." And I'm like, "Shut up, you terrible! Like, you're gonna be the evil villain."
Welcome to another episode of Unresolved Textual Tension. It's me, Katie.
You have to introduce us, you hobo!
Oh, I'm sorry. I was introducing someone else. These are my lovely co-hosts. This is
Maria. Hi.
And the ruggedly handsome Will. I did not get my epitaph today. Katie is back, as you guys can see. And the book we're doing today is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. And yeah, we actually remembered the title, the author's name this time.
Partially because she has done a ton of things in Shadow and Bone.
Though Bardugo is having her moment right now, we're not doing Shadow and Bone, we're doing Ninth House, which is the series she did after Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows. And this was an interesting book to do because in general, my feelings were that like structurally this book has a lot of problems, but it gets away a lot with just how good a writer she is. And I don't mean she's like a fantastic writer or anything like that, but she is a solid writer. And so she makes parts of this book work in ways that a less good author wouldn't be able to. And I think also, last video, 1,000,000 to 1, go check out that video. It's doing quite well with the algorithm right now. I talked about how pretty much the most important metric for a book is the readability of it, sort of like how video games gameplay really is above almost every other aspect of it in terms of importance. And this book was very readable. I found it like even as it went on, I found it more readable. And so like I'll have issues I'll talk about, but it was I was invested and I was interested in see what happens and I wanted to read more, which doesn't happen with a lot of these books. So what were your feelings, Katie?
So I read the whole thing in one day. In one day as in like 6 hours. And it was very, very delectable. I'm on the same page as well. There's like a couple of little hiccups that are like, oh wow, this would be a major issue if it weren't for the fact that she filled in all these other parts so well. And this was actually executed semi-well. Or by semi-well, I mean very well. I got so into this book that it didn't leave my mind for 3 days afterwards, and I had a dream about it as well.
She also made a reference to it at work.
Did I really?
Yes, I said something about like good-looking men, and you were like, "Yes, we don't trust them, like the grandma in Ninth House." And I was like, "Jesus Christ, Katie!"
That's so funny.
Like it was a reference I should have immediately gotten.
I don't want to trust good-looking men.
This is why you guys trust me so implicitly.
I think I'm more on Will's side, where I really enjoyed it, and there's a lot of things I loved, and there's a lot of characters I really liked. The ending was a huge fumble for me. Huge goddamn fumble. I dislike a certain, and the thing is, because we had such a nice setup, and I know exactly how you could have fixed the ending to still have what happens happen, but in a better way. Like we end up getting like a surprise villain in the end, like out of nowhere, and it feels. I don't like it, and I think it could have been done way better and set up a second book better. Because unfortunately, this feels like an almost completely, except for the Darlington thing at the end, all the major problems in this book tie up really neatly. And I think for a sequel, you could have had a better send-off into it. And listen, we need to go to hell to save Darlington is one hell of a setup for a sequel, but I think it fumbled it. I go back and forth whether I like the main character or not. But I think you're supposed to. I don't think she's supposed to be an immensely likable character. Lindbergh in the comments made a fantastic comment about, I wanted her to feel more unreliable as a narrator. I wanted to have more of a connection to the fact that she was a junkie and she used for years. And we never even get a moment where she was like, I would kill for just like a little hit of something, not even like any pull for it. And I think that could have added to her, because it just feels like two very distinct, and you can make an argument that happened because she was using the drugs to feel safe, and that by being here, she felt safe. But then once she stops feeling safe, I would have really liked having some more connection to that. But yeah, so that it's a really good, competently written, some exciting points, some very, very impactful and visually, like the descriptions in a couple places. Oh boy, punch you in the face a couple times. And it plays with motivations really well, which I think is important for something that is at its heart mystery.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. Again, there's certain issues with it, but like again, I found on the whole it worked well, which I think is a credit to Bardugo. It's interesting because for some reason I thought she was a bad writer because one of my friends had read Shadow and Bone and thought it was just very mediocre. And to be honest, this may be a case where she just improved as a writer over time because she definitely has a lot of skill. Some of her, for the most part, her prose are pretty invisible. And then every once in a while, she hits you with like a little moment that you're like, oh, this is really nice. It reminds me a little bit of George R. R. Martin, Take a Shot, where like for the most part his prose aren't notable, but then every once in a while he'll have a really atmospheric description or one that just kind of sticks in your head. And I found her style to be kind of like that. In the Discord, there were some good. I read through it yesterday. I kind of hate how Discord formats things because I have to scroll all the way up to the beginning of the conversation and then read down. There were some really good comments about things people didn't like. So people who were in the Discord, please bring those up as we go along because I don't remember a lot of them now. But we have such good discussions on the Discord. Like I need to check through it a lot of time.
Bellbomb being out there was very silly. Like I didn't like the Daisy plotline. Yes.
For the love of God, that was the weakest part. And from the minute she was introduced, I'm like, she's the bad guy.
Yes, exactly. That's the problem. But the book could have subverted our expectations by doing what I have in my head, and we'll talk about that. And then Valerie says some of the villain monologues at the end were a bit much.
You don't say. They legit had monologues.
Jill says, OMG Maria, are you going to do a rewrite for this one? For the ending, I have a solid. I thought about this in the shower. For my past 2 showers, I've been rewriting this ending because I don't know what happened. We were doing so well.
You don't know if we're actually in a flashback right now.
I hope not.
Lindbergh mentioned this as well, but like Darlington just suddenly disappearing halfway through the book, even as a viewpoint character. I thought that was such a mess up. I think he should have been, he should have continued, like, from his point of view throughout the entire book. Once we figured out his mystery, like, for it to stop, I would have liked, maybe that's how we start with what's happening to him, or just, like, carry his, like, his version of what happened.
There's a problem that he is not needed in this book, his viewpoint. It just isn't. There's no reason to really have it besides like info dumping. Go ahead and give a description though of the basic premise.
The premise of this book is we have a main character. Her name is Galaxy Stern. Goes by Alex. She can see dead people. No plot twist. We find out relatively quickly. And she is at Yale. And she is part of this society called Lethe. Or Leafy, if you are listening to the audiobook, where it literally sounds like Leafy. And I was like, they just named this society Leafy? No, it's Lethe.
Yeah, it's Lethe, like the Greek word, which I always thought pronounced Lethe, which I hate. So Lethe is like a little bit better. But yeah, I still call it Leafy.
This book is couched in is the idea of secret societies functioning at a old boys university, which is Yale. And at Yale, there are all these, and this is something that like movies and books have been written about before, but like, ooh, are there secret societies doing the occult at Yale? and being magical and creepy, like Skull and Bones, and who are in these societies. That's the conceit of this book. And Lethe is so there's 8 different houses that do magical stuff. There's, hey, we do funky mirror and illusion magic. There's, hey, we used to control weather magic. There's, hey, we look in people's guts to divine things that are going to happen in the future magic. There's necromancy. There's shape-shifting. And each of these houses does rituals and does shit. And then to take care that all of them are not being too dirtbaggy and shit up, there is Lethe, the shepherds of the group. They are here as an overseat council to make sure nobody is taking advantage of no one. Nobody is killing rando people. Nobody is taking too much of other people's power.
So one thing I will say is that I actually really appreciated this world building. It's not perfect, but after we read Lore, which was Secret Society of People Hunting Greek Gods Every 7 Years, check out the video up here in the upper right. I'm not going to put it there. I appreciated that this one actually made sense in that it's more or less just the explaining, it's backing up entrenched power systems that belong in real life. Like the person cutting through the guts to check for the future is doing it for stock market prices. Some of the houses are supposed to be like Hollywood houses, essentially. They could do like glamours. They like fix top 25 songs or stuff like that. And so like that I liked in terms of it kind of makes sense. There's always this problem with secret society magic, urban fantasy, in that it doesn't really make sense that there's all this different stuff going on under the surface when it would change history. But in this case, it backs up normal history. So I thought that was somewhat clever. And the magic system in the book, it's weird because it's relatively atmospheric, despite being also a relatively hard magic system. And the main character of this is sort of an outsider coming in. We talked to, I think Maria mentioned her, Galaxy Stern. Which is basically a war crime committed by her mother in terms of naming.
I think the name Galaxy is pretty freaking cool. Because then you can have Alex as a nickname or Gal.
I would like to say that is one of the most Katie responses I can ever, like,
Okay, this is
if
just
you
because
understood some of Katie's names that she has wanted to name children over the years.
I still think, yes,
Don't do it. Don't say
I
it.
still think Fitzgerald is
Oh,
a lovely
God
first name for a girl.
For a girl.
I actually that's cute. I like
No,
that.
it is
Yeah,
not.
it is.
It is.
Nickname Fitz.
I work in a school, okay? They're gonna eat Fitzgerald alive.
Fitzgerald is cute. I always liked June for a female name. I always thought that was
Aw,
cool.
June.
I love Mira. She was huge SoCal mom vibes. She was. I liked her family. I liked Alex's family and the kind of setup for that overall.
We'll talk about that, yeah. Because the thing about Alex is that she can see dead people, and she's been able to see dead people from a really young age. They call them grays, but they're basically ghosts in this world, and they're just wandering around everywhere. And, she grew up in a really rough fashion in that she could see all these things. Kids don't believe her. They bully her. At one point, and we'll have to talk about this as a element throughout the book.
I think it's fine. Why are you oh-godding it?
It was very I mean, it's not oh god in like a bad. It was just rough to read.
Oh yeah, no, it was rough to read.
That was the most affecting scene in the entire goddamn book. Like, and there's some other fucked up. Actually, no, there was one scene that icked me more, and I still have issue with that. I'm gonna have to deal with.
I'm so curious what that is because
I was into it. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I have no idea what you're saying. She's talking about.
When I get there, you're gonna go, oh, I shouldn't have said I was into it.
But as far as what Maria's referencing in her childhood, I think that is a very awesome scene. As in, it is. She went there, the author. And I think she did. I think it made sense that it was there. So I find no problem. It's because Will and I were discussing yesterday how some people think this book is, how did you say it?
A series of grape scenes with plot in between. And I actually kind of understand that a little bit more now after finishing the book. We'll get more into it as we go.
I will say consent as a concept, whether it's full on grape or just absolute disregard of consent, is huge in this book. Fucking massive.
It definitely is a theme, and it's definitely something the author is commenting on, so I don't think it's gratuitous.
No, I don't either.
I don't know. We can talk about it more as we go. My mind is still a little bit here and there about it. Jill says, I think potentially that the childhood scene was written well. As someone's trauma, it was handled quite respectfully. Like, I didn't know it was going to happen, but it didn't seriously upset me.
And then conversely, on the other side, Aaron Houston said, Galaxy really didn't need to be beaten up every other scene. She goes through a lot.
I think that's part of the point, though.
I mean, she's an action hero person, so like I was pretty used to it. So I should probably state before we get started that a lot of my understanding of like a lot of my kind of anchor point or reference point for this kind of genre of book is the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, which is also paranormal detective fiction, and in a lot of ways that I feel like is actually a very good counterpoint with this, and that I feel like he's much better at doing detective stories. And even though I have issues with that series, especially with how like horny he is in later books, but he in those books the main character is always getting progressively more and more beat up as the book goes on. So I did that part didn't even really ping for me. Galaxy Stern, as we said, she can see dead people. It's been rough for her growing up, And then something tragic happens with like a couple of her friends and stuff. She's a junkie at a certain point in her life. She takes drugs a lot to get away from seeing dead people.
So I do think, because thinking back, I don't know if she was like a full-on junkie doing tons of hard drugs, because she did say that she didn't like a lot of the hallucinogens. She just liked the things that not, so like pot was the thing. So I think I forgot.
It's more than pot though. She did everything that wasn't a hallucinogenic, and there were specific things. And the thing is it doesn't matter. Whatever it was she was doing, whether it was just pot or whatever, she did every single day, all the time, in order to not experience her normal lifestyle.
I thought what it was is that it was anything that deadened her senses to the dead. So like caffeine or not caffeine, cocaine was like not great for that.
Yep.
So the way this book is structured is that we start with two different timelines. We start with Galaxy in the present, where she is now the Leafy member who watches over Yale. She's called Dante, which is the apprentice, and Virgil is the master, because it's a very funny joke about Virgil leading Dante into death, which I did love a lot of the classical references that she's just like about.
And then meanwhile, Darlington's like, my classical literature.
Darlington is the other main character. He is the Virgil. I'm going to keep messing this up, so just forgive me now. Who is teaching her all the ropes and stuff. And he is an interesting character that got more interesting about halfway through the book, at about the time he then disappeared from the book.
As a...
I disagree that that's where he got interesting, but yes, I did very much dislike that he, the fact that he becomes a demon is so stupid.
And it's also just not well laid out prior to. I thought it was way more and the thing is, because they just axed him from the like point of view, I was like, okay, let him be dead, that's fine, just let him. And then they were like, no, he's a demon, and I'm like,
I mean, look, I'm glad he's not dead. I thought it would have been really stupid if he was dead after all those points of view. I also hate the setup. I hate the setups like this one, where it's like there are two characters in a pivotal moment of some sort, and something bad happens to one character, and there's a miscommunication as to why that bad thing happened. Like, did she actually, let him go into the dark abyss to become a demon? Or was it all an accident?
Or did he choose to save her?
Like, I hate that. I hate that everyone is like, what's her face? Not Centurion.
Dawes?
Yeah, Dawes.
Dawes
I hate that
is
she's
my
just
favorite
like,
character.
Dawes is my...
Okay, look, Dawes is the annoying Velma. I don't care what you have to say. I dislike Dawes.
What the?
Fair, but I love her.
Pistolas! Pistolas!
I'm gonna drop Pistolas.
She was very annoying in the first half of the book. The second half of the book, she was great. First half of the book, I wanted to jump off a cliff.
I never got that Dawes blamed her. I got that she was... What? I got that she was projecting her own guilt, that Dawes didn't know what happened, and Dawes wanted answers, which Alex was not actually providing.
Oh my god, that is not how I read it.
And I got that they didn't get along, but once they started interacting and
I mean, look, I'm not saying I actually hate Dawes. I just thought, I definitely did not read it as Alex projecting at the beginning, and I thought it was so irritating that she was blaming Alex.
I just thought she was introverted. Like, I just literally thought she was just autistic coded, but mostly just introverted. But okay, so basic structure of the novel. We have Alex in the present, I think in fall, or I don't know. They do it by seasons, but I have already blanked on what they were. And she is now, Darlington has gone somewhere and we don't know where.
It's in spring. They're in spring now. He went missing in fall.
She's helping out the societies as the Dante, and a young woman is murdered, and she starts following the case even though she doesn't want to, and everyone's like, leave it alone, that those scenes happen, and she's like, I can't, I have some kind of an emotional attachment to this case. And then before that, a year before, or
a semester before, because she's still in her freshman year. We the first half was her with Darlington.
That's what I was going to say. And then so we have, and then the earlier one, a semester before, it takes place from Darlington's point of view, and he is guiding her through the steps of becoming, the Dante. And that's from his point of view. And those stop halfway through the story, which we'll talk about as a problem. And then we get we get flashbacks at certain points to her time as a child at 2 or 3 points of the book, and the particularly traumatic moments of what happened. And so that's the structure of the novel as a whole.
One thing that I want to say that I think helps this novel is that it is written in third person.
Yes. Oh my
Yes.
God. Well, yeah. If it was anything else, I don't know that it would have worked.
The reason it works so well is because you get flashbacks to Darlington's childhood. You get them in a scene together, and then Darlington thinking about something that they spoke about 2 days ago, and then it going in scene for that. And the way she's able to weave in and out of these different timelines within the current plot line is really impressive, and I don't think can be very well done in first person, or at least I think it would be way more difficult. And so I think it's a strategic choice here, and it's working very well. I mean, first person could never.
Any flashback heavy material should not be in first person unless it's like some type of flash fiction or whatever, something more experimental. It's just a little too much with first person. There's too much internal thought required, whereas you get more visual from a flashback.
I want to clarify something really quick for Judo Shrew. For serious shenanigans. What I mean by it's the spring semester. So you have the fall semester, and then you have the spring semester, which starts at the beginning of the January, end of December.
I thought she meant that, or Judo Shrew saying that it was a winter semester when he went missing.
It was the fall, because the fall semester goes from August to December, and then spring semester goes from January. So it's still technically winter, and you're right. We only actually hit spring at the end of the book, but when I said spring, I meant spring semester specifically. Academia.
And so one of the big mysteries in the current timeline, or the last timeline, is what happened to Darlington, because it sounds like he died. Like they're trying to keep hidden that something happened to him. They're saying he's in Spain, which is a hilarious alibi.
Valerie makes a point. I was listening to it and I was like, why am I able to follow this so easily? These are flashbacks on flashbacks, which they are. It's real intense at certain points. She does a good job initially setting up some mysteries, which is, like Will said, for Alex's timeline, where we're getting her narration going forward, what happened to Darlington. And then in Darlington's point of view, because for the first half of the book, these are happening simultaneously, it's what the fuck am I going to do with Galaxy Stern?
I would like to make mention that while I do overall prefer Alex's perspective because of what's happening and because she's like a fun character and all this, I do have to say I really, really, really prefer Darlington's perspective for a hot second, just because the mystery of Alex from his perspective is delicious.
I saw that in the Discord. A bunch of people were like, I like Darlington, but I didn't like Alex. Or for me, like, I actually liked Darlington more from Alex's perspective than I did in his perspective, because I felt like there was more of a serious sense of like, I don't like him, but actually I do, kind of from her perspective. Whereas in his perspective, I didn't love him as a character. I thought he was okay, especially he becomes more interesting to me later on. But it is interesting that they're very different characters, and so people have very different reactions to them, it's nice to have in a book.
What I thought worked for Darlington, and which you only get at the point right before he disappears, is his entire backstory with his grandfather and his family.
Yeah.
That is fucking, because you don't think that's his life. Because you hear about the house on Blackstone, but you hear about the house and you're like, oh, this is a rich boy from money, and then you get his backstory and you're like, oh man, this boy lived on like Pop-Tarts for a while, and it makes it so much more rich, and his obsession with the occult.
Black Elm.
I knew that it was black something, and because I was like, it's not the house on Orange Street, that's the Lethe house. But anyway, and he got so interesting. I did not love the whole sequence where he when they're in the manuscript party.
That part I actually think was sort of fumbled, especially with what happens later in the book. Going back to his backstory for a second, yeah, it's not the backstory you expect. So partly I've found in stories that I tend to really be on a character's side after I hear about their childhood, especially if it's told in sort of like a lyrical stream of consciousness way. And that happens to both Alex and to Darlington in the book, but it happens about halfway through. And after that point, I was on their side. But before that point, I wasn't as much. And like Maria said, Darlington's does not, like, that is not the backstory you expect. And it's not something that snaps him into place as a character, because he disappears after that. And it's also weird because it's not something Alex knows. Like, that's kind of one of the weird things about it, is that we're supposed to be learning about their bond, but like, this is not a bonding moment for them. He's just remembering the flashbacks of how he grew up in privilege, but also not. Like, there was a kind of a destitute aristocracy feeling about him at times. And in Alex's case, her drug use was like that. Like, she was a hardcore in a drug nest dealer situation. And like, you don't quite get that feeling from in her perspective earlier in the book. And I get that she was trying to be a different person at Yale and stuff. And so it's supposed to be the layers kind of coming off, I think, more so than for Darlington. But to me, it just felt almost incongruous.
I could see what you mean by that, but I really like this comment, though, from Judo Shrew. I think Darlington's fascination with the occult is really well juxtaposed to Alex's fear of grays. It's got a way of showing how trauma changes your relationship with the concept of the unknown. So the author had a use, I think, for the pacing and the organization of the reveal of the flashbacks. And I think we are making good comments, but nonetheless, we're focused on something different than what the author herself was interested in using that as a tool for.
I think she had very specific reasons she did things the way she did. My argument is I don't necessarily think those are the best ways. You're right. She was focusing on something else. But I think, because I do agree that we learned something about Darlington that is super impactful, changes our understanding. So we are bonding with him as a character, but Alex does not have that moment. I thought they were way closer at the beginning of the book than you get to, but by the end,
they don't even know who each other are, and they still had a weirdly like pseudo-sexual, like awkward romantic moment. But I definitely, so one thing that really I think, I don't know if I mentioned it to Will yesterday when you and I were talking, it kind of seems like we skip in their relationship, like as in we saw that pivotal moment where he goes from, I mean, we do technically, but that like kind of, I'm irritated that this is my Dante, blah, blah, blah. And then from her being like, wow, this guy's kind of like a jerk, into, wow, I trust you a lot. We never like actually get to those points in scenes, and we kind of assume it. And I think we miss out on a lot of really important emotional moments that would have made us a lot more content with the pacing and how these things are used.
I made this comment during Mask of Mirrors, where sometimes there is emotional buildup for something, but then the scene that is the payout of that buildup is missing. And I will agree that I feel like that happened with Alex and Darlington's relationship.
The breaking glass moment is supposed to be the turning point for them bonding, Judo Shrew says.
You mean the scene we got in passing as just a description to be described after the fact, and we didn't experience in scene? We literally got him going, you want to break something else? And then chapters and chapters later, you get her going, I wonder what Dawes thought when she heard us breaking all that glass and walked in on us.
And then getting drunk.
We didn't get that scene. That's the scene. That's the fucking scene.
I needed to have more of their dialogue in the moment, and then kind of like where they first talk to each other, and he's giving her the rundown on the campus and everything. You getting the back and the forth and the back and the forth.
Pearl says, this is what I meant when the perspectives could have been woven better. Yeah, I actually feel like, going back to it a little bit, like I felt so much more intimacy in the early chapters of Alex's perspective with her intimacy with Darlington than I did from them actually on page together. Because like early on, there's this sense of like she really misses, like in her mind, she's not allowing herself to say she liked him, but she did kind of miss him.
And there was this sense of like a physical intimacy,
yeah.
Like,
I know, it was delicious, but then we don't, like, it's actually missing.
And then it turns into, like, boners and nipples. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the problem. It goes from this sense of, like, closeness and physical intimacy at a certain point to, like, oh.
He got hard again against her from behind.
And she went, listen, fuck me or stop. Like,
no, that kind of ruined it a little bit.
That part seems so, like, not from Alex, but that just in general seems so out of place. I'm like, how did we get from her being his, like, you know, protege into...
But then they don't even do anything. And it's literally right after the manuscript party. You don't feel it because there's things that happen in between. But the manuscript party happens where he's all like, let me touch your thighs and worship at your knees.
That was a really cool scene.
It was a great scene.
We'll talk about it.
But then the fact that the exact next thing that happens is she takes him to Blackout and they get into bed together. And then, like, he gets hard against her and she's like, fuck me or don't. Like,
even though she was like, this is not you. You need to stop. Let's get you to a safe space. Immediately jumps into bed with him and is like, fuck me or not.
Do you see what I mean by that? This is like, I think the manuscript party was fucking fumbled. We're doing such a bad job getting through the plot, guys.
Okay, hold on. Really quickly. Miss Alison says the scene where she goes to Blackgown is hoping he's there and crying with the kitty. God, that was so much more powerful than anything about the two of them in his viewpoint.
Together, yeah.
There was such a sense of loss and melancholy in her viewpoint. And you keep thinking he's dead. And then, like, halfway through the book, you find out that even she doesn't think he's dead. And you're like, wait, what? There's a weird disconnect in this book between, it feels like she was trying to write one book, then kind of wrote another book. And the two don't
I could see that.
super match up at points. Like, I always felt like whenever Galaxy started, like, quipping, I was like, this is a different book. Like, this doesn't quite feel like her when she's being a smartass at times. It's not totally incongruous, but to me, it felt a little bit like that. Before we get into that, though, we should describe a little bit more of the plot. So,
yes,
Maria, hit us.
Galaxy and Darlington, they get shoved in together. From Darlington's point of view, you get him trying to teach her stuff, trying to make her read. She's not reading things. She ain't a good student. She didn't finish. Did she finish high school? I don't know. I think she did. We'll say she did.
She's a high school dropout.
She's a high school dropout. She's in college at Yale now, and she has to take classes. But she's not a good reader, and she's not great at studying. But they end up, because he is able to give her tools to make her, like, because she didn't know that the Greys, which she called the quiet ones, could be dealt with, and you can tell them to fuck off. And so he starts giving her tools, which makes her feel safe, because for once she can control these beings that terrified her. And there's a point where, because I need to describe this, where he's like, oh, don't worry, Greys can't hurt you, they can't touch you. And then she's like, are you fucking sure about that? And he's like, it happens every once in a while, and they can hurt you, and you know, sometimes they can do stuff, but then they have to cross the veil. And she's like, and what you learn is that at like 13, I think she was younger, but at a young age, she is essayed by a ghost when she gets her period. Because one of the things you learn about ghosts, the Greys, is that they are attracted to intense desire, intense enjoyment of life, blood, and sugar. Like they hate things. There's no ghosts in graveyards. I love this.
One of the ways to banish them also is to say death words, and that scares them off. They don't like death and they like life.
I love that.
It makes so much more sense than, like, yeah, there would be a bunch of ghosts at a graveyard.
Yeah, she has gotten her period for the first time, and a Grey who doesn't sound like he was a great guy in life shows up and assaults her. And it is pretty graphic. It's also the first time a Grey has touched her at all.
Ever in her entire life.
So here's the thing. Initially, when I read this scene, I was like, oh, that's a lot. And I felt like, not that it was gratuitous, but you didn't really need this. The function of this scene is to make her feel more vulnerable to Greys. So something honestly like a Grey just like touching her or hitting her or
choking her,
literally anything that breaks that I can see them but nothing happens to they can touch me, I thought that would be enough. We'll talk about more about how that ties into the themes later, but like after this point, she's just like, she starts to really have problems.
The other thing that's happening while you learn about this scene is from her point of view. You also get a scene that happened right before this where the Greys, there were two Greys during a prognostication from Skull and Bones where they broke these a railing. They were able to touch the railing. And so what the author does is she's layering points. She layers a scene from Darlington's point of view where he's like, they can't touch you. You get the Greys who fuck up the railing, and then you get this flashback from her. And so it's this layering of the expectations, how they fall out, what it means, and how rare a thing this is. And so it definitely is serving a purpose, and this author has made this choice very specifically. It is a harrowing scene, but the other thing it does is it sets Alex apart. Like, she had a good friend, she no longer does, because when you walk on a girl riding,
they can't see the ghost, so she just looks like she's doing some weird shit in the bathroom. So 2 points. One is that Judo Shu had a super good point. The Greys are very much portrayed as the fear of grape and grape culture. She isn't believed, it's known about, and nothing is done about it. It destroys her relationships, and in the end, it was easily preventable. That's a great point. That's a really good point.
That's why earlier when we were discussing this a little bit, I was like, that's like the whole point of the book, I almost feel like, is this idea of like consent.
One will also say is that when people talk about a gratuitous grape scene, I think it's worth talking for a minute about what we consider gratuitous and what we don't. The thing about it, okay, so to back up, why is grape not like murder in a book? The reason is that it is a thing that happens endemically in our culture, and so there are a lot of people who are triggered by it, and it is already treated semi-ambiguously in terms of the morals of it. People are much more willing to forgive that than murder, for example, and so that's why it requires special handling. It's gratuitous usually if it is not examined by the text and have an impact on the characters. So showcasing how grim dark your world is, that's gratuitous because you don't super need that, and it's not ever really explored in depth. To give characters a background story, and so in this case, it is integrated into the plot and the themes that the author is talking about, and it actually really impacts Galaxy. And there's a sense that the author actually really cares about it as more than just traumatic backstory. Like I read a book, some people in the Discord complained about this years ago, called like The Painted Man, I think, which like one of the main characters is just in constant threat of it, and it feels gratuitous. And then at one point it happens, and it literally just feels like it was there so that the male character could then come in and like heal her with his dick, like, you know what I mean? Like he could come in and heal her, and like that is gratuitous in a way that I don't think this is, even though there is a lot of this. So I mean, that's my opinion. What do you guys think?
In fan fiction, as everyone might already know, if not be able to assume, there is a lot of sexual stuff that people want done to their characters that doesn't happen because, in fact, it would indeed be gratuitous. So this was not gratuitous even remotely. I thought this was actually, when I read it, I was like, nice. Like, not obviously like nice for Alex, but like nice as in you did that well. I get what it's doing, and it's really fucking awful in a way that makes sense to build her. I mean, a huge part of why she probably had her drug addiction. That is a coming of age story that affected her in her coming of age part of her life. Also, I really like how it was not, and when I say gratuitous, I mean both as in unnecessary as well as like the scene itself being overt in its descriptions. It wasn't. It was pretty low key. It was one little mention of something, one sentence, and we were off. And no other description of any carnal or like, I mean, it's a fucking ghost stick, you know? So like, you're not going to get a lot of other things going on in general, but you know, she doesn't, and I love that it's mentioned she doesn't know if it actually happened. Did it happen? I kind of blurred out during that moment because of how fucking traumatic it was. It also helped alienate her from her only friend that she had at the time. So it's super important. I think it's great. Again, I don't understand the whole, like, this is a book of rapes with some baby plot spattered in between.
I could see how someone could feel that way, but I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's accurate because that denies the fact that the author is not. And the author, okay, the other thing is sometimes authors do this kind of like they're into it a little bit, like Outlander, from what I understand, has a thing where like this maybe happens more than is normal. Angry Otter says, I'm doing someone's taxes and I just teared Ghost Stick. Welcome back, Katie.
For me, when I first read it, it really, like, it was such a, I don't want to say graphic because it isn't graphically described, but it was such an affecting scene that it took me a second to like get back into the rest of the plot. But in context of the whole book, I don't think it's being gratuitous. I will argue, though, that I think you can do what happened in this book without that scene. Not to say that you could have done it as well or that it is unnecessary, but I do think there are ways you could have done it without, because there's that scene where that the Gloma is choking her, and she sees that video of herself and she looks insane, and she's like, oh, this is how you discredit me. And that is easily a way her reputation could have been sullied at school and have her be like the alienated person. But I think because this specific book plays with consent, willingness, how does what you want, like, because there's a scene that's going to come up later with a friend of hers named Mercy. Because of that, it makes it functions where it needs to be. Could you have done it without it? Yes, but because this book is about consent, Serious Shenanigans has made multiple comments in our comments right now about how the Greys and seeing them, not seeing them, being alienated is how a lot of SA victims live their life because of the like stigma or people not believing them, them getting isolated, and then all of that. And I think the book is trying to make that point. And so because of that, I think it does work.
Going back to kind of the plot a little bit, one of the big things that happened is that at the beginning, a townie, which is like a girl who isn't from college, so she's like less important to people, got murdered. And Alex is like, oh, for personal reasons, I have to track down who did this. And so that's kind of the main spine of the plot. It took me a weird amount of time to realize that this was going to be a detective story because it actually doesn't quite feel like it for the
Initially,
first.
no.
Right. And I think that's one of the problems with the book is it's not actually genre enough. Like one of the problems I found later in the book is that there aren't enough suspects. Like there aren't quite enough people in the world for you to be like, oh, she's tracking down each suspect. And you as the reader are going, okay, is it this person? Is it that person? Detective novels tend to be somewhat formulaic because they have to be by their structure. And this doesn't mean they have to be bad or uninventive. Agatha Christie wrote so many and they're all really fun and good and she could do different things with them. But going back to the Dresden Files that I mentioned, I feel like he has a better handle of how a detective story works, the beats, and then he can tell a story through that. Again, not always good and often a little too horny. In this case, I felt like that was not quite as well done.
As far as like the there's not enough suspects things though, I don't know if that's really necessary for like the way the nature of this book is having to do with the supernatural as it does. It's because there can be something lurking in the shadows that we don't even know about type of thing.
I think it causes problems with the ending. I think that's where it suddenly hits the wall where like if you had laid the rails a little more carefully, I think that's where the problem comes.
This book has a small cast of actual characters. One of the reasons we immediately know Bellbomb is a suspect and doing fucked up shit is because she gets an actual scene talking to Alex. Kate, the girl from Manuscript, we don't actually get a long one-on-one scene where she's talking to her. Colin, we don't get a long scene one-on-one talking to her. The two people that are in the room at the end are two people that she has one-on-one conversation. It's
very obvious.
Economy of cast is what it's called.
I understand what you're saying then as far as how many suspects there are. There just aren't enough characters to consider.
Because like at no point did I think Colin was actually
I was like,
a
who is
fucking
Colin?
suspect.
This is one of the reasons that Harry Potter works. J.K. Rowling is a hobo, but because it's two kinds of novels. It's a school story and a murder mystery, and so she's able to wind up all the suspects in the school story part so that you're like, oh wow, this person here. Like she's able to give a really big world so that when the mysteries do come through, you thought you were digesting it. And so this one kind of tries to do that as it tries to sneak in Bell Bottom or whatever her name is. Her function in the novel is to give Galaxy hope of a normal future, but actually setting up a suspect. But you're like, she's only one of three characters who have scenes. Aaron Houston says, I don't know if it was the suspect's things, but there needed to be someone on staff sending Galaxy on the case.
She was horribly ignored.
And also, like, where are the adults?
It kept occurring to me to that. I was like, what is happening? Where are the, like, this is like the kids next door type of stuff.
100%. Even, because, like, if you think about it, Dean Sandow is technically not actually part of Leafy, but he is.
Where's the board that they're talking about all the time?
Can I not have seen them? And there should have been adults around. Like, I'm sorry, it should not have just been a grad student in charge of like the children of Leafy.
Yeah,
that was weird.
What the fuck? Leafy is in total, guys. This thing that is supposed to. There are 8 other houses that they have to manage and make sure they're not fucking shit up. There is literally 3 people
and a shitty cop. A shitty cop that doesn't care, somebody who's an introvert and not plugged into things, somebody who might be dead and is at least missing, and somebody who used to be an addict, barely made it into school, has no past to be responsible.
And who has been here for 4 months.
You're right. She has only been there 4 months. That's so weird.
Like, come on. That's where, because there's so much good world building in this. The details of the Greys, what they love, the details of the different houses and the. Where are the goddamn adults? It feels like I'm watching a play, and the set pieces are like beautifully painted, but obviously cardboard.
That's very.
This world is hollow. Her and Darlington, they bond. Then they go to the manuscript party, because you, from Darlington and her flashback point of views, you get her meeting some of the different houses. The manuscript are the people that are the like mirrors, smoke, illusions, and this is the moment where Darlington gets like roofied basically, and looks at Alex and sees her as this like galaxy celestial.
She's the goddess of the wheel.
And also, like, because she was pretending to be Queen Mab, and he's like, she was Queen Mab. And then he's like on his knees and he sees himself as the knight before her, being like, I shall serve you forever. And then there's this like god, like faux goddess lady who's like, oh, you are an acolyte. And I'm like, bitch, that man is drugged.
This is, again, we have to go back to talking about the sexual themes, because I felt like this was fumbled pretty hard, and it feels like, and again, I'm not saying Bardugo is like this or anything, but it feels like the difference of when a man is assaulted versus a woman is assaulted, because when a woman is assaulted in this book, it's treated very seriously and with like long-lasting consequences.
Except for Mercy, which we'll talk about later.
Well, but even then, it's treated seriously. In this case, it's not even really treated like he was assaulted, because I mean that's essentially what happened. He had his will. He was roofied.
He was roofied,
and he started trying to do sex stuff with Alex. And he does not feel violated by this. Like, there is no real sense that he feels like a little embarrassed about it.
He does.
A little embarrassed. He doesn't feel violated, and it doesn't have an impact on his actions in the way that it did with Alex.
By reading it, I don't know if it makes a difference between the tone of it with reading, even though it's the same words, but it's reading versus listening. But when I was reading it, it did have an effect on him in that moment severely, but then there was no fallout.
My argument with Mercy is it is treated more seriously by those around her, but like 4 scenes later when we see Mercy, Mercy's fucking fine.
Yeah, post-manuscript indignant email writing to Darlington Chefs, because Ms. Alex Snow says, yeah, that was funny. And the problem is also, not only does it not really have an effect on him in terms of really feeling violated, it also doesn't have an effect on him and Alex's relationship, which it should. It should be shoving a massive chisel into their relationship, because not only should he now feel somewhat violated when he's around Alex, he should also feel guilt around what he did.
She's seen this part of it that he didn't even know existed.
And also, she should be feeling violated, because this should be bringing back all the stuff that happened with the ghost, with a man that she thought she could trust completely. And I actually think that's a fascinating situation of these two people trying to, having had a relationship, having had it blown up by this outside circumstance, which triggered a lot of their trauma. And how do they then match up who they were to how they now feel? But it's not done. Like, literally, she brings him back to the house.
They get into bed together.
Why was she in bed with him?
Why would you get into bed with a drugged man? I don't know.
Why wouldn't you go, I don't know, make some chicken soup, some tea, bring it up to him, bring him his cat, walk the door, and be downstairs waiting for him to get up and be on his own?
And the thing is, this functions as the romantic start for the two of them. It is the first moment where they start thinking of each other sexually.
That is not romantic.
It is not. It shouldn't be. And what's worse is the actual point of the manuscript party. There's 2 points by the way Bardugo is writing this. One, sexual catalyst between her and him. Miss Alex knows I think Alex is just used to so much worse. Also used to how people act when they're high.
Well, that might be true for the character itself, for the theme that this author is trying to produce.
I feel like she's been removed from that world for so long, she would have a stronger, like, she trusts Darlington. I think in a way she does not trust almost anyone else for a long time. And then also, Judo Show says really quickly, yeah, in a way, Alex's plays a role in the R culture by covering it up. That is actually...
I can see that being a betrayal of themes.
That's actually a really good point that I didn't ping for me, but you're right. She later, like, she tells Darlington she's sending a really strongly worded email about it, but she doesn't. She basically uses it later as she's like, well, it's more useful as a way of getting...
a favor out of manuscript.
But, like, that's a massive betrayal. And it's not treated by the book that way.
Again, the function of this manuscript party is one, sexual catalyst, because there's an earlier scene where she remembers laying in bed and their bodies pressed together, like at the beginning of the book, and you think they had sex. Like, you think they were lovers, and then you realize, no, it refers to this scene where a drugged man who is having problems controlling or functioning in his sexuality is grinding up against her butt and tweaking her nip.
Audio viewers, Katie doesn't know it, but I put her full screen while she's doing a weird face.
She's full wine mom. Anyway, the other function that this is doing is introducing Meredy. That's the other function of the manuscript party, to introduce Meredy, because while Homeboy is going off on his knees at Alex's altar, you see these acolytes who are just like, they've got purple tongues and they are like serving, just serving. They're just serving. They're not serving anything in particular, and they're happy and ecstatic to do it. And the thing that you find out is that within manuscript, you have people who choose to be acolytes. They take this drug called Meredy, and it makes them happy to serve completely. But they elect to do this. It's part of their process. Remember this purple tongue drug is going to come up later. It ain't great. Anyway, the party ends. And then you find out, like, the two of them are doing well together. She's able to handle some stuff. And then you learn about Darlington's. I'm doing Darlington's point of view history.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Darlington is researching some stuff. You learn about his terrible past, which is basically his parents were rich and stuck up. His grandfather was very rich, and he funded his parents. He was raised by his grandpa. His grandpa was like, my no good son, I love you, Darlington. You're best. I'm trying again with you, which is also complicated. And then he intentionally, but with permission, helps his grandfather commit suicide.
Oh yeah, and it's like kind of subtle.
Yeah, it's very subtle. It does happen. When his grandfather starts getting really sick, his parents are like, we will just take over the house while he's alive, because while he's alive, they have access to everything because they're the next of kin. And so his grandfather's like, Darlington, don't let them take Black Elm. This is our house. Don't let them bleed us dry. Let me die. And Darlington has to make the choice to just casually pull some pluggies and then go drink at Peabody's and chill. And then he's by himself for years. He just lives in Black Elm by himself.
The electricity goes off. He doesn't have money to replace it. He's eating on his own, like, I don't know, like ketchup or whatever.
He starts working someplace.
3 different jobs.
Here's the thing with this backstory and why I actually think it needs to be significantly earlier on.
Yes.
And we have to back up a little bit and talk about privilege, because this book is very interested in privilege and how Galaxy has none, and how she's going into this society that does have a lot of privilege. They don't care about screwing up people's lives. They care about like poetry and the classics. And she starts the book being like, this is really dumb. And actually, this is one of the things I didn't love about her as a character early on, is that it felt like she was too dismissive of like university culture. And I get the whole book is about exposing the rot beneath it in terms of privilege. But she, to me, and I couldn't like legitimize this claim, but she to me often felt not so much like a poor person who was dealing with rich people, but what an insecure rich person's idea of what poor people think about their privilege is. Like, there was a weird amount to which she just like was constantly roasting rich people for being rich. And it makes sense with her character in terms of how bitter she is about everything and about what she's had to go through. But like, in real life, poor people aren't super bitter all the time when they're around. Like, I grew up lower middle class, and like I've been around richer people, and I'm not like, oh my God, you left a tip for the server? How do you have all this money? You had an extra wine glass? Like, it was a little bit much, I
But
felt.
have you been around people that rich with that level?
Well, and in that culture too, a specific like closed culture. I mean, I know from my own sister's work in academia, there is a weird, I call it like a Greek pederasty. It's not, but like there's this weird culture of like, you have to know a professor and the professor kind of helps you out and you go to parties. Like there is this like really weird culty aspect to academia in the real world. And so like, I get it. I could not defend this point, but that's how it felt to me sometimes. The thing about Darlington is that by having this you think he is one of these Ponzi rich people, but actually what this flashback shows is that this Ponzi culture is all he has. His grandfather was willing to die and leave him alone so that he could keep that their house, their aristocracy intact. And that was one of the reasons that Darlington is so much the gentleman of Leafy, as they call him, because this is what he had. One thing also to mention here is that one of the things that makes the book work is that there are a lot of small moments where the author puts in little nuances that me and Maria are always asking them to. Like after his grandfather dies, there's a point where like he's drinking or something and he like thinks to himself, like he would never admit it to himself, but he misses the maid more than his grandfather, which I thought was such a lovely touch.
It's like those are the touches in all the episodes I've ever been in on this podcast that I mean when I say you need those smaller, little, subtler moments. That Will also mentioned that to me yesterday. But like those moments are what characterize a character truly, truly. If you don't have any of those, your book will be missing soul.
It's like a sentence, but it grounds you so much in Darlington's. And so again, he's not just doing this as an upper class affectation. These really mean something to him. Like this city means something to him. This house is not a sign of privilege. It is the only home he has. It is the thing his grandfather died for.
It's his romanticism. It's his childhood imagination that he doesn't want to die.
And we didn't get any of that in the first half of the book. And like it fundamentally changes his character. And the thing is, it's not a revelation for Alex in terms of how she thinks about privilege, because the book is still about how rotten the upper class is.
And she never learns this, really.
Thank you. She never learns it. So it's a weird stumbled, and on top of making me like Darlington more, which I felt like it just should have been earlier on. In terms of the themes of the book, it's a little confused.
Are we supposed to assume she knows it because we're told it and she knows where he lives and he knows about the cat and everything?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
She talks about, they all talk about how Black Elm is super important, but she thinks, she was like, what are we going to tell his family? And they were like, his family's not, he's not in contact with his family, so don't worry about it. So like she initially thinks there is a rich ass family somewhere in the wings, but there is a point where they talk about Black Elm as this crumbling structure and that he's alone in it. So again, I don't think she explicitly knows. I think she knows that but also for her, given her history, I guarantee you, even if Black Elm's a little crumbly, it still looks great, you know, for what she has seen. So Valerie says she has a moment in Hellbent where she learns more about Darlington's past.
So she doesn't know.
And as Miss Allie Snow points out, you think initially Darlington is another Trip. Trip is a good boy sailing. A guy in Skull and Bones. Darlington and her go to Rosenthal House because of the St. Elmo group of people who control weather.
Nobody makes an Elmo joke either. I was like, what?
I know. I would have loved that. Anyway, there's a giant black hole. They're like, is it a portal? And then Darlington looks at her and he goes, it's not a portal. It's a and then he's gone.
Woo! Sucked into the darkness, killed forever.
And the thing is, I thought it was going to be way more complicated of a scene because she acts like she is at fault. Like like in the first half of the book, she constantly refers to it as if, and then all you figure out is she could have tried to save him from what, bitch? You had no idea what was going on, and it happened in 10 seconds.
I know, I hated that. That was so stupid.
Two other things that are important. One is that Dawes, who is like the upper person, after this point is like, oh, he's in a pocket universe. We'll go get him in a moon. He won't even know. He won't even know he's there. And so the whole book, and that's revealed in Alex's viewpoint, I think about like halfway through. But up until this point in the book, you think he's dead. Like you think some bad shit went down. And so in Alex's viewpoint, you are assuming, when you're in a character's viewpoint, you generally assume you know what they know, unless it's a heist book, and then they're going to tell you at the very end that they did a thing. Like that's how that works. And even then, that kind of feels cheap in this kind of a story. But in this whole time that you and Alex, you think you and Alex are on the same page in terms of thinking like Darlington is dead, something really bad happened to him. But actually, for her, he's just in stasis. And also she's kind of worried about him coming back because of some other things I'll mention in a minute. So, and that doesn't match up with how she thinks about him earlier. It's a weird, in general, you do not want a character and a reader to be dissonant. You want them to be on the same page, right? Because that breeds identifiability and relatability and all those things. And so when you suddenly have a weird disconnect like that, you need to do it very deliberately and for a reason. Yeah. And in this case, it just feels lazy, actually. Like she just didn't. Again, it's weird. It's weird this book works as well as it does when it has so many structural issues. And the other thing is that she was found by the professor and recruited into Leafy because she had been in a situation where a bunch of people had been murdered who were her friends. And she was like the only one not murdered. And what we find out at this point is that she was the one who actually did all the murdering. And it's not like she forgot about it. She's known this entire time, which again creates a certain amount of dissonance because we were in her viewpoint this whole time. And it also causes conflict because he is going to have to tell, like that is who he is. So there's conflict between them. So when he gets dragged in to this black hole, she is like, oh, maybe I should have stopped and maybe I was worried about him telling people. But also, like, he was getting dragged into a black hole. Like, what were you going to do?
You could have painted it where she's guilty because while she misses him and wants him to come back, she simultaneously doesn't, because then that means she loses everything she has. But that's not it. It is painted as guilt, as in whatever happened that night. she had an accidental hand in it. And so you think that maybe she fucked something up, that there was a ceremony and she was supposed to do something and she didn't, or maybe she got possessed by a gray, and or like something happened. And then you're like, he just got sucked into a black hole. It happened in 10 seconds. What the fuck could you have done? Like, why do you think you're that cool, bitch? Like, no.
Also, why are you so mournful? As far as you know, he's coming back. Like, it's mentioned her viewpoint, she doesn't think he is for some reason, but like, why are you sad with his kitty if like you know he's coming back and you're actually more worried about, you should be more worried about that than anything else. So there's this weird disconnect again between, I think, what the author thought what the character was like and would be thinking and what actually they showed organically from the book itself.
Aaron made a comment that I want to highlight because we haven't actually mentioned this point. I'm going to explain the point and then the comment. So when she killed all of those people, her friend, so she was in a weird polycule, an unintentional one. And Helly was the metamor, to use poly terminology, that she was best friends with. Her and Helly became super, super, super flipping close. And there was a party going down and it was going to be a bad time.
She lived with a drug dealer, like a hardcore drug dealer.
Their mutual boyfriend,
Len, they had a pimp. They had a pimp.
And he was running a party for a real bad guy, like a concerningly bad guy. So Helly and her are like, we're just not going to go to the party. That sounds like a bad idea. That's where bad things happen to girls like us. So they go, they chill, and then Helly tricks Alex, and she goes back to the party to try to get more money out of the situation by using herself. She didn't want this to happen to Alex. She was actively protecting Alex. She made sure Alex didn't have enough money to get to the party on time. So Alex literally had to walk her butt all the way back to the party. By the time she comes back, she can't find Helly. She gets into bed, she sleeps. Helly comes into bed with her. They're staring at each other.
So
Helly, it's so sad. It's such a gripping scene. Helly is going like, no, like she's just almost chanting, like she's hugging and she's kind of smiling at Alex, but there's this like fevered, and then they go to sleep. She wakes up, Helly staring at her again, and she goes to reach for Helly, and her hand passes through, and then she looks behind her, and Helly is still asleep in the bed behind her, except no, she's dead. That's Helly's gray. And she realizes they killed her. They gave her so much fentanyl that she just died in bed next to Alex, and Alex is gutted, and she goes to like, eventually Len comes in, realizes Helly is dead, who again, one of his girlfriends, and then they're like, we got to get rid of the body, blah blah blah, and then her and then the guy who is responsible for all of this kind of laughs about it, and Helly is like almost getting ready to leave, and Alex is like, don't go. And then Helly looks at her, and the men are being really rude and crass and speaking about Helly as if she was nothing.
Yeah, because she's the hood. She's not part of the program.
She looks at Helly, and Helly says, stay with me. And she reaches for her, and she lets Helly's ghost inside her, and is imbued with inhuman levels of strength, and demolishes everyone. And by the time she finishes, she is a shocked little husk, because it was half her fury, half Helly's fury, half Helly's strength, this whole combination. And at the end of it, she doesn't know what she's doing. And then at the end of it, Helly takes care of her and makes sure that she's not going to get blamed for it. She walks her super, super far away, gets her in a river so all the blood and stuff is completely washed off of her, and then like brings her to another place and leaves enough fentanyl in her system that people think she was drugged too, and thus cannot blame her for the murder. It is insane. It is so heartbreaking. But anyway, that's what what's his face figures out. Darlington's like, you murdered them, and she's like, well, technically yes, with help. But
so really quickly, this is a lovely heartbreaking scene. Like, it's written so well, and you're so on her side. But the thing is, it doesn't necessarily feel of a piece with the Alex we have seen in the first half of the book. Like, there are parts where Alex all of a sudden starts getting kind of like angsta for like, she gets kind of like tough with some of the people she's but like in terms of it is framed as like this is her rough past self, her rough upbringing kind of asserting itself, but the thing is, it's also treated almost a little bit like, oh, I need to watch out for that dark part of myself. You don't ever really get the sense that this is someone who has murdered 5 people and then blocked it out. You don't necessarily get a feeling, to me anyway, that this is she has been like haunted by this moment, or it has affected her, or you get a lot of her love for Helly in certain parts, but it's not again, it feels like a little bit of a split between books. It's not completely incongruous, but it does kind of feel like it to me.
I completely agree. I thought that this scene should have played a bit more. What I feel is she should have been fighting harder not to remember this. Like, I should have felt her, because I agree. I love an unreliable narrator. It's great. But the thing is, I need to get a feeling that I am missing something, that something is not being disclosed to me. And she talks about Grind Zero, and it's just not enough for it to connect. And Serious Shenanigans just said, so much of book 2 is about survivor's guilt and murderer's guilt, and the weakness of this part of book 1 makes book 2 not hit as hard. That makes complete flipping sense. Absolutely, because you are not dealing with that at all. I get no survivor's guilt off of her at all. Like, there's not even a moment where she was like, I should have been at that party. You know, like, I never get it. Anyway, because it's 11:46.
Yeah,
we've been doing this for an
we
hour
haven't
and
even
30.
talked about the murder plot at all.
I hate to pause, but I do want to say, during the very first scene, during the prognostication, if anybody has seen the movies Skulls, from like 2002 or some whatever, it's literally the same premise.
It's dark academia is like the genre. Maria, this is kind of what I love about Maria, audio listeners, is she just looked in the camera and was like, damn, I'm a handsome bitch. And you can tell she was just so pleased with how she looked for a minute.
My hair was laying really nicely. I'm sorry.
I know. I've never felt like that in my entire life. It is one of the things I enjoy about our relationship. He just preens like a parrot sometimes. I'm gonna have to rush through the plot even more, I think, because basically speaking, we have the murder plot, and she is trying to track down this girl. And she has a detective who knows parts about the society. He's called a Centurion. Basically, she has to hunt down a bunch of different suspects.
She breaks into a morgue. She learns that Lance, Tara's boyfriend, is getting thrown for the murder. She learns that Lance's face was there, but for some reason, that's still not satisfying. She still thinks something is up. Dean Sandow is kind of covering everything up. Then she gets a Gluma attack where this like ghost thing like literally bodies her in the middle of the street and then puts like a weird powder inside her and she's coughing up beetles. Dawes has to be like, oh shit, someone's trying to kill you. Let me help you drink this yucky stuff. And then Dean Sandow is like, maybe you were asking for it because you're weirdly magical. And I'm like, oh, he's a villain. He's a fucking villain. What the heck? Like, who says that? This girl just like nearly got eaten from the outside by bugs. And Dawes has to be like, are you victim blaming Dean Sandow? And this is the beginning of her and Dawes bonding.
That was a little on the nose.
Yeah, I thought that was a touch on the nose as well, but like, I get it. That's one of the themes of the book. And basically at this point, one of the things is you are not supposed to talk to Greys because if you talk to them or say their name, they'll get attached to you and that's not great. But she was saved from the Gloma by a guy called the Bridegroom, I think.
Bridegroom.
Who talks like he's a Kennedy.
Favorite character.
You should hear his voice in the audiobook because it sounds like a Kennedy.
Really?
Miss Stern.
She needs to feel safe. She needs basically a ghost bodyguard. So she talks to him and she goes into the Borderlands, which is death, to go talk to him. And it's actually a really cool
It's a sick-ass scene.
And basically, she strikes up a deal with him saying, you find Tara Hutchins, and he tells her how, and then I will look into your murder because everybody thinks he killed his wife. So he's like, you need to break into Tara Hutchins' apartment and get something that has her spit on it. She breaks into Tara's apartment. She tricks Detective Turner into telling her where it is. She breaks into it, and then a man just appears out of nowhere and starts punching her like a giant, like, brick of a human just starts punching her. She, because North, the Bridegroom, is with her, she forces him into her body and takes possession of him to fuck up this guy. But the guy keeps popping in and out using portal magic connected to one of the other houses that uses portal magic. And she's like, oh shit, what's this? And he's like, who killed? Did you hurt Tara? Blah, blah, blah. And she was like, what the fuck? I'm not. And so they're doing that. Detective Turner comes in and Detective Turner hates her. He's like, get out of here. I hate you and your lethy people. And he doesn't really think magic exists. And then he comes in and he literally sees the man he has in custody for the murder bodying old Alex and then disappear out of nowhere. And he's like, oh shit, magic is real. And then they find out that this guy Lance is back in prison, and he's like, oh shit, magic is real. What are we doing? I guess you were right, the houses are involved. So then they start looking into it and they do find a bunch of connections with the houses, and what they basically find out is Tara and Lance were selling drugs to the houses but also making magic drugs like Merity, that thing that makes you love to serve people, which they have been selling because they thought it didn't do anything, to this guy named Blake. Blake takes Meredy, goes to parties, gives it to women, and then they happily serve him. It is as gross as you think it is.
Oh my God.
Yep. It happens to one of her best friends, her roommate, Mercy.
There's this one scene in particular, though, where Alex is looking at videos, and one of the videos is there's a series of videos that he's taken of just R words.
Yeah, it's gross. It's not even necessarily super graphic, but it's gross.
It actually sold to me as him being a villain for a hot second. I was like, wow, he's a sociopath.
And then she has to like get revenge for Mercy, which has one of the grossest, and I don't like that scene at all.
I love it.
Judo Shrew says, "Memories, little thieves here. The importance of eating shit." No, in terms of
yeah, Maria, I thought you loved talking about this.
Shit.
I thought you loved
the way she
talking
gets
about-
revenge on I already blanked on his name, Johnson,
Blake.
is she takes a video of him eating shit.
She makes him. She uses compulsion to make him eat shit. And the thing is, I love revenge, and I was hoping for a fantastic revenge story. That for me was too much. Like there was something explicitly because again, disregarding consent is like I'm not here for retributive justice. I don't like that. There's a lot of ways you can get justice, and a lot of ways you have also violated. Someone violating someone's consent is not an excuse for you to violate someone else's consent. That is like super fucked up. I don't like it. And again, if she would have used North to body him, like secretly, I beat the shit out of him. I would have been fine. There was just anyway.
The biggest problem is that Mercy's not feeling great. They're in the cafeteria. This video goes around, and she says, "You know how they say revenge doesn't make you feel better, but I am better now." And the thing is, unfortunately, she is now better. From this point in the book forwards, she does not act traumatized. It does not seem like what happened to her is bad. That is more of my problem with it, is that of how that's treated.
100%. And I made that point earlier. Mercy gets over it way too quickly. It's really like it undermines the initial impact of it a little bit for me. Anyway, so she realizes Blake is using Meredy, and she's able to get out of him who sold her the Meredy. Guess what? It was Tara and Lance. They were growing Meredy for manuscript. Plus, they were also doing portal magic with Colin, who works for Bellbaum, who is this teacher who is French, and is like, "Alex, what do you want from your life, Alexandra? Maybe you shall be my assistant and work with me for the summer." And she's like, "Wow, that's really great." So they're like, "Oh, look at all of these connections." And then you realize that Tara had figured out how to use the portal magic herself, because she gave them the portal magic. Stopped working years ago, but Tara invented mushroom drugs that made the portal magic work, and so she could extort them for knowledge. And Tara was like, "Oh, I love this sweet knowledge and traveling all over the world with my boyfriend to do things." But anyway, so they get into that, and then as they're like exploring these things and trying to figure it out, Blake, something else happened where there was like a scene, like Alex got hurt, blah blah blah. But then the next really pivotal point is she's in a house. She's in the house on Orange Street with Dawes, and there's a knock on the door, and she immediately smells compulsion in the air. Like Alex knows something's messed up, and she's like, "Don't go to the door, Dawes." But Dawes, it's too late. She's already at the door, and she hears someone say, "Open the door," and it is a compulsion. So Dawes opens it. Blake comes in, and he's like, "I killed Tara. I did shit. I'm gonna fuck you up. Fuck you, Alex." And he starts like going at her, and because it's a compulsion, she has to listen. Also, she notices he's not opening his one hand. Like it's just tight fist.
To be fair on her part, she put headphones on.
She did. She tried really hard, but unfortunately, he got to her. She also had the house play lots of music because the house is kind of alive. But anyway, he's going at her, and then Dean Sandow comes in and is like, "No, don't hurt her." And then Blake uses compulsion to make Dean Sandow stab Alex, and then it is at this moment that she remembered that once upon a time Darlington traumatized her by having these jackals come out and attack her, and she's like, "I can whistle and call jackals." So she does it. Nobody's expecting this. The jackals attack everyone until Dean Sandow knocks him off. His leg is uber broken. He looks like he's about to die. Blake still comes to and is going to punch her again, not opening his fist, and then bam, he's off of her. Half of his face is caved in because there's Dawes with the statue of the founder of Lethe, just bashed his head in. They all go to the hospital. Dean Sandow is like, you're right, I should have listened. Because of me, Lethe forgot its sacred honor of looking into these things and taking them seriously. Look what Tara was doing. Look at what the houses were doing. All this bad stuff. And I'm like, shut up, you terrible, like, you're gonna be the evil villain. Like what are we doing? So she ends up going back to her place. There's a whole thing where her mom comes to visit and like her dealing with her mom. No time for that. But then she's like, she goes to the house on Orange Street because North, the ghost, is like, I need you to interact with me. And he keeps showing up and being like, talk to me. And she's like, no, I don't want to talk to you. I already know who murdered Tara. Did you find her? No, go away. And the thing is, she knows it's not true because when she had Blake under compulsion, he was like, no, I didn't murder Tara. I was busy that night. What are you talking about? So she's like, why did he admit to the murder later? That's kind of fucking weird. But she's also like, I'm going to get on with my life and do things. So she's like in class, and then North takes control of her and writes some dates down. These dates spark her memory because she's a curious fucking Nancy. So she goes back to the house on Orange Street. She goes to the library. She starts trying to find Darlington's notes about the murder because Darlington was looking into North's supposed murder of his fiance and suicide. So then while she's there, she realizes that the dates that North gave her when he possessed her are dates that correlate to the murder of a ton of women, like 8 to be exact. There are 8 houses, by the way, that have these nexus powers. And what she realizes is that each of these women died around the time that a piece of land was bought up to found one of the houses on. And she's like, oh my God, the murdering of women. Tara was murdered to create a new nexus for the new house. And then she's like, oh my God, Darlington must have gone, because of course if Darlington figured this out, he must have gone to Sandow immediately to tell him. And Sandow knew that if he was trying to kill Tara, because the other thing you learn is Dean Sandow is going through a terrible divorce and has no money. And if they were trying to create a new nexus of power, Dean Sandow probably knows. He probably lets this happen so he can get money, because the other houses never let the things you monitor give you funding.
Yeah, I know. What the heck?
Terrible idea. That's not how you monitor stuff. She's like, oh my God. When she told Darlington, when Darlington told Sandow, he was planning Tara's murder, which means if it would have happened, Darlington would have known immediately what was going on. So he got rid of Darlington. Bum, bum, bum. And so she puts together the profile, and she's like, I'm going to go talk to Dean Sandow. He's at the president's house, the president of Yale, having a welcome back to being around because you were really injured for a while party. She goes to the party and she's like, Dean Sandow, I need to talk to you about stuff. And she like texts Oz, and she texts Turner and is like, I need you. And then she also calls North, and she's like, North, I'm sorry I was ignoring you for a while. I need your strength. And he's like, ride or die, bro.
Love North.
I love North too. He's great.
He's the best.
An important thing to mention, because we didn't mention it before, but the night North was murdered, something possessed him. You get it because he's no longer, she possesses him to see what the last night of his life was like, and she realizes something else possessed him and caused him to kill Daisy and himself. So it wasn't actually him.
I don't think we've discussed this, but he was known for murder-suicide with his fiancée, Daisy. He doesn't think he did it. He can't find Daisy. He wants to clear his name. To clear his name, he needs Alex to figure out what happened, and that's like their quid pro quo throughout the book. And she has done shit all on this task.
Shit all. Darlington did all the work previously. Wait, so they get there, and she's like, Dean Sandow, I have the files you were talking about the land deeds. And he was like, oh yes, I forgot I asked about that. And they go talk, and then she has her phone doing like a heckin' record, and she starts talking about things, and he's like, yeah, what the fuck are you gonna do about it? Yeah, St. Elmo wanted a new house, so I was gonna try. I went to them and told them that if they gave me a butt ton of money to help me deal with my divorce, I would give them a nexus of power. But then I tried, but then I realized I had to kill someone, so then I tried Tara, and then it didn't even fucking work. So what are you gonna do, Alex? And she's like, ha ha ha, and then he has taken a compulsion thing, like he takes some of that compulsion powder from manuscript, and she grabs North and puts him inside of her because the compulsion won't work on the dead, so she would have had to listen, but by having North inside her, she gets out of it. And so they're sitting there, and they're kind of at an impasse because like he can't compulse her. He's sitting there with compulsion, and it's like impasse. And then who should come in but Professor Bellbaum, the French lady from before, who was like, Alexandra, what do you want out of your life? And I'm like, no. Don't do this. Don't do this.
I was waiting for this to happen. Okay, so there's an earlier scene right before what's-his-face comes to try to kill her at the what's the frat boy's name? Blake. When Blake tries to come and kill her, Alex, meaning her, there's this one mention of how like Bellbaum and the dean and everything are like besties, and I'm like, okay, so they're both bad guys. And guess what? They were both bad guys.
Bellbaum comes in and Dean Sandow is like, Bellbaum, call the police. She tried to attack me. Restrain her. And Bellbaum is like, silly Elliot. And then immediately like, Alexandra, I don't know what's gotten into you. Actually, I do.
Kennedy voice said, apparently.
North is inside you. And she's like, you can tell I have a ghost inside me. And she's like, of course I can. Anyway, and then what you find out is that
it's so stupid, honestly.
Bellbaum is not Professor Bellbaum. She is Daisy, the woman that North was supposed to marry that he shot. And what actually happened is that she, like Alex, could see heckin' ghosts.
I would like to make mention, Aaron says, by the end of the story, North actually does know more about Gaxley than Darlington does. I'm all for North and Alex romance.
I'm not gonna lie.
That's such a better, that actually, oh man, now I ship it. That'd be cool, because he's like old school too.
Actually kill off Darlington.
Ghost boyfriend. Not monster boyfriend, but ghost boyfriend.
Yeah.
And so basically what Bellbaum says is that the night she died, she was hanging out with North, and then a ghost, because during one of the prognostications for Skull and Bones, like one of their very first ones, the victima that they had died, and his spirit like flies out and goes into her body because she regularly was taking grays into herself to use their knowledge or their strength to better her life. This girl, unlike Alex, because Alex came from a shitty situation and wasn't able to control a lot of the things and thus was very scared all the time, Daisy was a smart bitch. She came from privilege. She used the grays. She used them to get what she wanted. This was a conniving bitch. Anyway, the gray comes into her, is freaking her out. She's like, ugh, get out of me. And as she throws the gray out of her, it flies straight into North. North gets taken over, and then the gray shoots her using North's gun, and then shoots North. And she's like, I didn't want to die. So then she possesses her maid. And she doesn't just possess her maid. She eats her maid's soul. And so she has just been living in her maid's soul, in a maid's body her entire life. But every few years, after a while, her body starts decaying, so she has to eat a lot of girls. And then she finds her first girl who was like her, could see other ghosts. This is a hecking delicious, sustaining, long-lasting soul to snack on. So she eats it, and now the deaths are happening 50 years apart, because one of these ghost-seeing girl souls sustains her for 50 years, where the other ones were way less. And so what you realize is Alex was the next snack. That's why Bellbaum was getting all close to her and sugaring up. So the entire time, Alex thought that, or for the past 2 days, she's a self-made woman.
Very nice.
I can't!
For the past 24 hours, Alex has legitimately thought that the houses, the different groups, were the ones killing the girls to create the nexuses. And then once you realize that when Tara died, it didn't work and it didn't do what Sandow thought it would, you realize, no, they had no control. These murders were happening randomly on these places of power, and then they just built their houses on them. So the houses knew that a murder needed to happen for this to create the power of Nexus, but they could not recreate it themselves. And it's because of her. This bitch was creating these nexuses of power, and there's a point where she said, and then all these men build temples upon the sites of my murders, or my soul eatings, and they worship me, and they don't even fucking know it. And then she's like, now I'm going to, and she ends up eating Dean Sandow, because he gets up and he starts trying to like chant her away, and like say things, and she's like, silly Dean, so she eats him, and then she's like, ugh, like a mealy apple, and then she's like, hello Alex, I'm going to eat you, and then she starts trying to eat Alex, and Alex feels herself kind of fading and everything, and then she realizes, no, I can do the one thing I've been fighting to do my entire life. I'ma call all the fucking grays. I'ma get every gray up in here. And she just summons all the grays,
including Darlington's grandfather, who's like half naked with a cigar in his mouth, which
let me tell you, for as much as the cast of actual humans who are alive in this book is super sparse, she has described grays the entire book. And it's amazing, because in this moment, as they all fly in, you remember the kid trying to get the comb, but his hand doesn't exist anymore. You remember the mother with the little pram. And so all of these ghosts that she's been describing for most of this book just fly in. And then she's like, the lady's like, what are you trying to do, Alexandra? And she's like, my name's Galaxy, bitch. And
I hate that
power.
shit, but I
know.
love it. No, I liked it. I liked
hated
it. I liked it.
Like I said, she summoned all these grays, and so then she starts summoning the souls that are specifically trapped inside Daisy.
Mhm.
And so she starts pulling them out one at a time. And the last one, I think her name was Edith, I don't remember, is like the hardest to get out, but then she gets out and it's like a slip of a soul barely there. And then she rips Daisy out. And then once Daisy is out, the rest of the grays just rip her apart. And at first North's like, no, she's just a girl, she's the love of my life, don't do this. And then sorry, they just all rip her apart. And then that's how Belle Bomb's dealt with. She's gone. She's done. Alex has now learned some things about herself, such as she can not only take grays into her, but she technically could eat Heckin's souls if she wanted to, which is super powerful. But then the book ends with a funeral for Sandow, and then there's this woman named Michelle who was Darlington's Virgil, and she's like, Michelle, her and Dawes are like, Michelle, Darlington is heckin' alive. And Michelle's like, no, she's not. We were all there. Oh, I forgot. There's this scene where they tried to summon Darlington back, and then a demon came, and they were like, or a hell beast came, and they were like, his soul was eaten by a hell beast. He is dead. And then she was like, but if you get eaten by a hell beast, don't you sometimes turn into demons? And they were like, yeah, maybe sometimes. And so by the end, for some reason, even though nothing has changed, even though they have no more information than they had before, suddenly now they are convinced he's alive and a demon.
That was so weird.
The reason, and the problem is, this is one of those things that should have happened on scene, on screen, or in scene. She tells Michelle that she finally realized that when she was dealing with the dead, the thing they were chanting on the banks of the rivers was gentleman demon. She'd been mishearing it, but what we needed was the moment that she actually put those two things together.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because that makes it make sense. Unfortunately, you're like, why do you think he's alive all of a sudden? And he's a demon? Like, that makes no sense. And then she tells Michelle about how she put the two things together. And the thing is, she needed to hear it another time, because she's like, old Sandow called him a gentleman Darlington, and it was then that I realized they were saying gentleman demon the whole time. No, you needed to hear that, then go back into death to deal with some shit with North. Pretend like you could have invented a scene where she had to go back into death to deal with North.
I think the author is flying. You know how I think the author is flying in this? I think she's writing a movie scene and not a book scene.
But even then, I would have wanted it in, because if you were watching the actual movie, I would want the scene where she hears someone say gentleman scholar.
But that's what would have happened in a movie, is you would have had that audio not described in the background, and you, the viewer, could have put it together. And during that time, yeah, I actually noticed that a lot in this book now that I'm saying that aloud, is that this author definitely has watched a shit ton of movies and been very inspired by it. I feel like I could be wrong, but like, I feel like there are many scenes in this book that are movie, would work almost better as a movie scene rather than a book scene.
And so that's essentially how the book ends. And in book 2, they're going to try to get him back. And the thing is, pretty much everything we've said is a problem. One thing we haven't mentioned is that Darlington's viewpoint cuts about halfway through the book, and it feels weird because up until this point, you thought there was going to be some kind of a big revelation, but like, his viewpoint actually isn't needed in this book.
You could have taken it out.
Right. We get some information about him and Alex interacting. We get some info dumping about the world, and we get some info dumping about the two of them meeting. But in terms of the structure of that final reveal, and the final acts in place, you don't need it. It's not like he suddenly comes back to life and helps her out or something. And the other problem with the reveal at the end is that, like, literally Bell Bottom didn't need to do it. Like, she could have just walked away. She doesn't need to do it in that moment.
This is my rewrite, okay? Bell Bomb is too big. If she is literally the thing that has been causing the nexuses, and she has this like intense power, because like when you hear about it, you're like, oh shit, that's hella fucking powerful. Everybody has been living off of what you provide this whole time, and then for her to get dealt with in the same scene that you learn about this, insane. What a fucking lack of attention. So what should have happened is Dean Sandow does get arrested. Bell Bomb does not play her hand. She just avoids the whole thing, lets Sandow take the fall, but realizes that Alex is really close to figuring out what is actually happening. And then that's book 2. Number 1, bring Darlington back from the dead. Number 2, building up Daisy as an actual fucking villain to be dealt with.
Really quickly, Pearl says, I think his perspective would be made necessary if his thread showed him figuring out the mystery of the dead girls.
Exactly.
Yes, because he is figuring out about these dead girls. We just don't see it in his viewpoint. She figures it out from the notes. So it's literally like she wrote the novel without him and then was like, I have a little extra space. I'll include his viewpoints, and it's not necessary. But what you're saying about like setting up Bell Bottom for the second book villain, it makes so much sense. I don't understand.
Why would you play that hand in the same conversation that you lay it out?
I also thought the same thing. I was like, why would you have two like the pretend villain followed up by the real villain back to back to back? Also, side note, we have a visitor.
Oh, it's another kitty, guys.
Hank. It's handsome. I want you to know I made my cat noise and Pumpkin appeared.
And like, you don't even necessarily have to play your hand too much at the end of book 1. It can just be like, oh my God, I realized at the last minute there was more going on and something Bell Bottom is behind it. And then I can figure it out as I try to get Darlington back. She's going to be working, like there's so much that like, it's bizarre. And again, she doesn't need to play her hand, and it's not something that Alex figures out. And so in terms of a mystery, it's not really satisfying because it enters and leaves at the same time.
And we didn't know that was the mystery we were trying to solve. Like, it just comes out of nowhere. It would have been so much more satisfying because you talk about like active plot threads. Active plot thread was who killed Tara, and then Tara's death connected to these other women's death. And Sandow seems to be the perfect scapegoat. But then to have Alex in the back of her head go, that felt too easy. Something is wrong. It didn't work. If he did this, but Tara's death didn't make a nexus, what do you need to make a nexus? And then book 2 should have started with her researching what you need to make a nexus. And then North still being around, that would have connected us to the Daisy story still. And then you could have figured it out in the end. Like, why did we play that in one chapter?
He was even supposed to be hanging out with Bell Bottom as like an adjunct or whatever. So like she could have gotten more viewpoint time, and like it's a weird again, this book has such structural issues.
I thought that was so weird as an end.
Yep.
That is what I will say. 100% I did not like was the ending.
And it sucks because Bell Bomb is so obviously a villain that if you would have played it that it was Sandow and then actually made us think Bell Bomb was she was a trick. You were supposed to suspect her and she was fine the whole time. And then in book 2 you could have been like, oh no, she was fucking evil. Like,
it's frustrating. Again, that's just a lot of this book. And the other thing is that like Alex is now like, okay, I'm committed to being the Dante. Leafy is gonna fight the good fight, and it feels like not a great conflict because at no point did she like start falling in love with the upper class. Like the most that she is challenged with it is that she feels at certain times like, maybe I'll just leave this case behind and worry about myself. But it's not really a strong thread in her character. It's just something she thinks about once or twice. So her character arc to I'm now gonna fight the good fight and keep control of the houses from killing hobos doesn't really feel very impactful. The book works as well as it does because Bardugo is very talented.
Ooh, Judo Shrew. Wait, look what they said.
It would have been great if another Nexus gets made at the end, even after Sandow got arrested. Yeah, that actually would have been a really good end.
This is what I'm talking about, motherfuckers.
I also don't think she quite landed the whole, like, patriarchy, rotten theme at the end. It's not very it's like, yeah, no shit, secret societies of men are not great. Like, wow, good, well done. I would not have thought of that on my own.
They do things that is complicated and thus they have to be secret so people don't know they did it. Who thought that would be terrible?
Yeah, it works because Bardugo is a good writer, and so I am kind of interested. We're going to be doing Shadow and Bone for mid-month next month because the TV series, the second season, is coming out, and we're all about the algorithm. So, if you want to do that live, as we did this live stream about this book, and you can read along, join our Patreon. It's a good time. We have had some new people now that we roasted that Titanic book, so you'll be in good company. Miss Iso says, I wish we were doing Six of Crows as a book club instead. I mean, honestly, put it up for nomination for next month.
It's super popular, so it definitely is something that we'll probably just go through, especially because Shadow and Bone we have to do the first book and then we need to do the second book because the second season came out, but the Six of Crows. So for the algorithm, and especially because they are so flippin' popular, it's probably going to be good for the channel to just go through the Grishaverse series. So yeah, that'll probably happen.
All right, I'm going to close this down. Thank you all of our lovely listeners and patrons. If you want to support independent journalism, support our Patreon.
Bye.